morning. Bom dia. Tudo bem? I'm working on my Portuguese. My name is Sabrina, and as Tara mentioned, my husband, Cairo, and we moved here with our 2 kids earlier this year, and we welcomed baby Buddy 5 months ago. And we're so happy to be in Rio and to be here at Christ Church. Today's talk is going to be about compassion and power. And today's passage is going to come out from Luke 7. So if you would turn there with me, Luke 7, 11 to 17. Soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciple and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother. And she was a widow, and a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, "Don't cry." Then he went up and touched the coffin and they were carrying him on. And the bearer stood still. He said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. They were all filled with awe and praised God. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." This news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country. This morning, I want to talk to you a little bit about pain. Pain is part of the human experience. We're all very familiar with it. My husband, Cairo, has a very low pain tolerance. When I was in labor with our firstborn, I had intense back pain. Cairo had to push against my lower back to help alleviate pain. And hours into this, Cairo began to complain that his hand hurt and asked if he could stop doing that, please. It's okay. We've worked on it. We're good now. So there are different types of pain. There's physical pain. This is perhaps you've had pain in your body. You scraped your knee. You've broken a bone. Perhaps you know people with bigger sicknesses like cancer or disease. And there's also mental emotional pain, which is very common to our experience. These are usually associated with the difficulties of life stemming from experiences, perhaps hardships. It could be depression, could be anxiety, it could be loneliness. There's also professional pain. These are stemming from the workplace where maybe perhaps you've had bad experiences with colleagues or a difficult boss, or had bad experiences trying to find a job, or have suffered job loss. There's also relational pain, and these are broken relationships between family, between friends, or between neighbors. So what do we do when we face pain? There are certain common ways that we all go about facing pain. Perhaps we try to ignore it by filling our schedules and busying ourselves with many activities, meeting with people, or things to do, places to go, tasks to accomplish. Perhaps we try to numb the pain by filling our stomach with our favorite sweet. For me, it's chocolate. Or maybe for you, it's brigadeiros. Other ways we numb the pain might be more harmful with alcohol or drugs or different addictions. Perhaps we try to replace the pain by filling our minds with something else completely. It could be watching our favorite shows or movies. It could be listening to podcasts, playing our favorite video games, hoping that by turning our attention away, that our pain would just go away. Earlier this year, I gave birth to our 3rd child, Betty, here in Rio. During my labor, I received something called an epidural to help lessen the pain. An epidural is usually administered by a doctor, whereby they poke a needle into your spinal cord and inject medication to help alleviate pain. So shortly after I received this, I noticed that something was not quite right. It only worked on one side of my body, my right side. Meanwhile, I could feel everything on my left side. As my labor progressed, I continued to be numb on my right while the pain intensified on the left. Hours and hours in this state of labor left me a bit paralyzed, but thankfully the doctors re-administered the epidural and finally it worked and I was able to have Betty. So perhaps our solution to pain are a bit like this. It numbs part of the pain, but not all of it. We can still feel it, perhaps just not the full intensity. We know that it's still there. It has not completely gone away. It remains unresolved, and it leaves us a bit paralyzed. Thankfully, God has a response to our pain. We see from this passage that the solution of God to pain is his compassion. In this story, we see the compassion of God demonstrated in 3 parts. Jesus is present with us in our pain. And second, Jesus brings power and healing to our pain. And third, Jesus reveals who he is in our pain. Verse 12 to 14 says, as Jesus approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said to her, "Don't cry." From this passage, we see that Jesus was compassionate and empathetic toward the widow and her loss. Jesus saw her, and he did not look away. He knew that she was a widow, and he knew that she had only one son. He knew that her son was the only person she had left that could take care of her, keep her company, and provide for her. He felt her pain and knew what she was going through was hard. And since we know that the son died while he was still a young man, his death was premature and tragic. He knew the details of her life, but he did not shy away from it. And he told her, "Don't cry." In the same way, Jesus has deep empathy for us and for our pain. He feels it with us. Can you imagine Jesus saying those words to you, "Don't cry"? Then he went up, in verse 14, he went up and touched the coffin they were carrying him on, and the bearers stood still. Jesus did not stay in the distance. Here we see that he goes up and he approaches the coffin and he even touches it. As he does this, he is breaking Jewish laws on not touching human or animal corpse or objects that come into contact with a corpse. Directly or indirectly, touching a corpse could result in ritual impurity under Jewish laws. Here we see that Jesus here is not afraid of impurity. Jesus was not superstitious, and he was not fearful of death. He saw it for what it was. Jesus did not hide from the funeral procession like I probably would have. He did not avoid having to deal with a crowd like my husband would have, or with death, or with grieving and heartbroken people. Many cultures around the world have certain superstitions and fears around death. In Taiwan, where I'm originally from, death is treated as something to be avoided at all costs, especially funerals. Funerals in Taiwan typically include extensive rituals with a grieving period spanning multiple days, during which you display the picture of the deceased. As you pass by someone on your street who is having a funeral and undergoing these rites, you're supposed to look away and avoid it as much as possible, for fear of something bad happening to you or perhaps attracting bad spirits by looking at it. Perhaps your culture also has certain taboo things around death, but Jesus is not afraid to break through those norms because of his deep love and his compassion for you and for me. He brings honor to the dishonorable parts of the human experience. Jesus not only is present with us in our pain, he also brings healing and power to our pain. In verse 14 to 15, we see He went up and touched the coffin that they were carrying him on. The bear stood still, and he said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. Jesus draws near, and he speaks to the dead son. "Get up." And the son immediately sat up and talked. His touch and his words have power over us. In this case, it was literally healing and resurrection power. The trajectory of this young man was death, and now as Jesus entered into it, it's become life, and life quite literally. When Jesus comes and touches us with his power, the trajectory of our lives change as well. Agnes Sanford was an American woman born in 1897 in China as a child of Presbyterian missionaries. She moved back to the U.S. in 1925 and became a pioneer of healing prayer and an author. She volunteered during the Second World War at the Tilton Hospital in New Jersey in the United States, and she prayed with wounded soldiers. In her autobiography, Sealed Orders, she shared a story from Ward 17 of the hospital where 3 men were healed. One of them is a young man named Frederick who had been wounded on the battlefield. I'm going to read an excerpt directly from her book to you. Among the 3 in Ward 17 was the miracle of Frederick. He lay in a private cell, which meant, according to the usage of that hospital, that his death was imminent. He was so gaunt and shriveled, and he looked like a wizened old man. His skin was yellow, his ribs protruded, and his skin fluttered between them as he breathed. There were tubes in both nostrils and attached to both wrists, and usually there was a doctor or a nurse with him. On passing the cell, I always threw him a swift prayer, but I did not ever dare to go within and lay my hands on him. And a general prayer from a distance was not enough. One day, however, he was alone and awake, greatly daring, but compelled by compassion, I went in. In all these years, I have found only one effective motive for healing, which is compassion. "You look like you're about washed up," I said. "Yep," he said. "What's the trouble?" I asked. I could see no wounds, or could I smell anything? "Blood clots," he said. This, thought I, should not be too difficult to heal. Therefore, I told him of the power that might help him get well. He was not interested. In fact, he shut his eyes, a clear dismissal. But having my teeth into this case, as it were, I was not moved to give up easily. "Listen," I said at last, causing him by my forceful tone to open his eyes. "If you'll just let me try the way I told you, I promise I'll never mention the matter again, win or lose. Now, how about that?" "Okay," he said wearily, and with a definite lack of enthusiasm. Whereupon he drew back the sheet, and I saw to my horror that his abdomen looked like a pool of dark blood, barely covered by a thin membrane. "Guts torn out," he said, noting my dismay. They didn't want to carry me in from the battlefield, but I told them they had to. There was a will to live if there ever was one. He had been kept alive for months by intravenous feeding, drugs, and stimulants. If I had seen his abdomen first, without stomach or any other digestive organ, as far as I could tell, I would not have prayed for him. But there it was, and I could not retract it. So I laid my hand on the 2 sides of the red, gaping pool of blood and envisioned the stomach and all the other organs perfect, and called upon the Lord to bring this about. When I reached home, I telephoned every powerful prayer group that I knew and called for help. And I myself prayed for a miracle to take place in Frederick. This would require an out-and-out miracle. This was no speeding up normal healing processes. Nothing could do this except the direct work of God through Jesus Christ. 2 weeks after our prayer, I again passed his room. It was empty. He was not in his bed, I went on to the common room at the end of the ward where the men sat about in wheelchairs, but I did not see him. Then across the room, my eyes fell on a young, good-looking, ruddy-faced man who bore not the slightest resemblance to the wizened old man for whom I had prayed in the cell. This young man gazed at me with a twinkle in his eye and a knowing grin. "You can't be Frederick, can you?" I asked him. His grin broadened. "Yes, ma'am, I am," he said. Remembering my promise, I made no reference to his healing, but simply said, "What are you going to do now?" His grin broadened. "Think I'll go to South America and get a job," he replied. The next week, he was not in his cell. He was discharged and at home. Once I had a brief talk with a hospital chaplain, I recounted to him the story of Frederick, for I knew he had also visited Ward 17 and must have seen him. "Is that what happened to him?" he cried in amazement. He referred not to the healing of the young man's body, but to the awakening of his soul. Soon as he could get out of bed, he said, "He was down in my office every day," said the chaplain. "He wanted a Bible. He wanted to know all about God and about Jesus Christ." So Jesus is still at work today. He is present in our pain. He is bringing healing and power to our pain. But the story does not end there. Jesus also uses our pain as an opportunity to reveal who he is. We see in verse 16, it says, "They were all filled with awe and praised God." "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." Here we see that the response to the presence and power of Jesus is praise. Seeing him and how he works results in a deeper knowledge and awareness of who God is, what he is like, what he likes to do, how he works. When we recognize the presence of Jesus and allow him to touch us with his power during our pain and suffering, we begin to know him better and his purpose. We recognize that this is God, this is his work alone, and he is here to help. As the people in the passage proclaimed, God has come to help his people. So we believe that God has come and that he has helped, he has come to heal. But what about the times when our prayers for healing are not answered? My best friend Kara, from back in the United States, lost her father to ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, 6 years ago. Her dad, Rodney, believed until the very last day of his life that Jesus could heal him at any moment. He prayed every day for healing as his muscles ceased to work and he gradually declined and was confined to a wheelchair, unable to eat or drink on his own. He never stopped praising God. He hung on to scripture daily, and he worshiped Jesus during his pain and suffering. Now, do you think he was wasting his time by praying, worshiping, and praising? If we could ask him, I know that he would say no. He believed with all his heart in Jesus through his entire journey of decline. Beyond his prayers for healing, he wanted Jesus the most. During his funeral, and even now, 6 years later, we have heard so many stories of people who have grown in their faith and have been brought closer to God because of Rodney's death. Rodney's faith and desire to glorify Jesus reminds me that the outcome of our prayer is not simply to have the result we ask for, but that we would know and love Jesus better, more than anything else. Whatever the outcome, we can draw close to him and we can pray with faith because he is worthy. Just as Rodney faced death from ALS, Jesus also faced death on the cross. Isaiah 53, 4-7 says, "Surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we consider him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed." Jesus knew that he was going to die, and he told his disciples about it. As it was about to happen, he prayed and asked the Father if this cup of suffering could pass from him. Yet he submitted himself in that moment, and he said, "Not my will, but yours be done." By saying yes and going to the cross, he became deeply acquainted with our suffering and frailty of this human body and this human life. By doing this, he showed us that he in his nature is deeply empathetic to our humanness, and he is closely acquainted with the human experience of death. We know that although the dead young man was resurrected in this passage from Luke 7, he later died again, as all humans do. But Jesus died the ultimate death, once and for all, taking our sin, taking our shame and our guilt and our transgression all upon himself. And he was resurrected 3 days later, never to die again. O death, where is your sting? Jesus defeated sin and death so that anyone who believes in him can inherit his resurrection life, a glorious eternal life in heaven. Revelation 21, 3-4 says, "And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things had passed away.'" No more tears, no more death, no more mourning or crying, no more pain. Dwelling together forever. The best part of Ronnie's story is that I know without a shadow of doubt that he is with Jesus. He is running around in heaven, completely healed, and he is in better shape now, with the biggest grin on his face and bright and colorful eyes, cheering on his kids from above, and my best friend. So we see here that Jesus' response to pain is his compassion. He is present in our pain, and he is empathetic toward us. He brings power and healing to our pain, and he reveals who he is in our pain so that we may glorify him. Perhaps there are places in our lives that are kind of like the dead young man. Something dear to us, someone dear to us, or a part of us has died through the difficulties of life. I want to encourage you today. These are the places that Jesus wants to touch this morning. He is not afraid of it. He is not avoiding it. He knows the details of our lives. He sees us like he saw the woman, and his heart goes out to us in love. He says, "Don't cry." He draws close to you. He is speaking to you, and he is revealing who he is to you, that your life and my life may glorify him, the man Jesus. So let's stand now and receive this Jesus.